You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
What's going on, Joey? How you doing?
Hey, good morning, young Colin. How are you today?
I'm quite well. Thank you for getting up so bright and early. This was kind of a struggle for me on a Saturday.
Well, listen, I'm your future. When you get to be my age, man, your prostate will get you up and your Labrador will get you up long before this time. Trust me. I get Amish people looking at me going, ooh, you get up early. So
that's a lot to look forward to, talking about dogs and prostates right out.
Oh, yeah. Call my dog prostate. So, yeah.
So big thing is your new special's out right now.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Exactly. How'd that come to be?
I'm really excited about this. First of all, talk about Luck of the Irish, right? I shot this February of 2020. I flew to Salt Lake City, Utah for Dry Bar Comedy. If you guys go Google Dry Bar Comedy or go to YouTube. And I taped it. I came home. Boom, global pandemic. So I'm like, woohoo! So it's taken a while for it to come out, but it's finally out. And it's been great. It's called The Notorious FOD, Father of Daughters. One of the cool things about the Dry Bar Comedy is you got to be clean. So it's funny and clean, but you got to be clean and funny. So unfortunately, I got a nice set there. It's only taken me 30 years to get a comedy special produced by Mormons. So I'm really excited about that. I'm working on a Branch Davidian camp next. They're going to do my next special.
The Mormons are a group of people I have an interesting set of opinions on, but apart from all that, so father of daughters, like how much of being a father like works into being your act, and how much do you talk about like family life versus, just like jokes, or how much does being a parent really shape your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, to me as a comedian, I've been a comedian my whole life. I mean, God, it's going on. I think my first open mic was like 30 years ago. So I'm one of the old guys. I walk into Philadelphia and I see, well, that used to be the Comedy Works. That used to be. And then I start naming the people I've opened for, and I'm going dead. So to me, everything's always been very autobiographical. If it happens to me, I talk about it. I come behind me. I don't know if we're going to have video on this podcast, but you see behind me is the bar that I grew up in, Fishtown. My grandfathers, my uncles are behind me. That's the tap room. Those are the guys that taught me how to tell jokes. Those are the guys who taught me storytelling and could hold an audience and just wait for the punchline. Don't rush it. These guys would tell a story the way you would eat a steak. You wouldn't wolf it down. You would take your time with it.
Now, everybody loves hearing a good story, right? Like watching like these old dudes that you like emulate and you enjoy listening to. What about that made you want to be able to do the same thing? Because everyone likes hearing a story, but not everyone wants to like figure out how to tell stories themselves.
First of all, if you call them an old dude, they put you through a wall. But
in terms of
physical abuse is lost in your generation. You don't know the virtues of being smacked around. But no, I mean, for me, it's just an art form. I mean, it's no different than poetry, or writing a song. Telling a story it's a craft. I never will call stand-up an art form. It's a craft, just like a carpenter, just like an electrician. It's a trade. We learn that trade, and you pass it down from generation to generation.
That's an interesting point. What exactly would you say is the difference between a craft and an art form? Because I mean, I always kind of use them as one and the same.
Yeah, craft is more of I take a very blue collar. My dad was a teamster. My uncles were printers. To me, is you start out as an apprentice comic. You do open mics. And you do enough of it, you eventually kind of get on the road a little bit and you become a journeyman, right? And then eventually you work towards mastering the craft, which you never will, by the way. Like, I believe there are master plumbers and I believe there are master carpenters. I don't think you could ever truly be a master comedian because you're never happy. I mean, I know for a fact that George Carlin would walk off and go, I could have done this better. Like you will never reach that goal, but you keep racing towards it. And that's the difference. Anyone says it's an art form, like, oh, shut the hell up. You're doing your job. Tell Joe, get check, leave.
Fair, but don't you think there's an element of like saying it's a craft says like anyone could kind of just decide to become a carpenter, right? They could just decide at 15, I'm going to be a carpenter. I'll do that. And then eventually I'll do that for the rest of my life. But not everybody could just pick and say, I'm going to be a comedian. And then
we have a higher attrition rate. The bottom line is we thin the herd a lot faster. So if you want to, you have to be off to want to do this. I think you're different, a different rhythm. I don't want to say off. I would say you definitely want to do something in a non-conventional way that a lot of people would kind of like to do. It's a difference between Eggs and bacon. The chicken was interested in your breakfast. The pig was committed. We're the pigs.
Okay, now, but there's an element where, like, you're a dad, you have a house, you have a mortgage, you have a different life separate from that. There had to have been a point where you realized I don't need to be 100% off. What triggered that exactly?
No, I mean, I think that when I was 19, I met my wife and I fell in absolute love with her. And I have a love-hate relationship with my daughters. I love them; they hate me. But no, I just like I've always. I mean, I don't know if you're old enough to remember a show called The Dick Van Dyke Show, but
not in person. But I've heard of it.
No, neither. I watched it in reruns, sitting at the bar doing my homework. And the thing I loved about it was Robert Petrie was a comedian, comedy writer, but at the end of the day, he went home to his family. And I love that. I mean, he had it all. So I wanted to be Robert Petrie. And, it's not been easy, but I wanted that balance. I like the fact that I have children. I love the fact that I'm kind of known in comedy to some degree where people respect me, but yet I'm also a dad and a husband first. So
that's interesting. You knew right out of the gate that you always wanted that traditional balance because, like you said, a lot of people who pursue comedy, their personality is a little, left of center. They're a little out there. They're a little more impulsive. They're willing to take a little more risks than the average person, which usually you associate with people not really interested in any of that traditional grounded, but ultimately really necessary so you don't go insane most of the time.
Well, factors in your life. But I also look at my wife and children. Like, I'm a working comic. If my tombstone said, husband, dad, working comic, I can look myself in the mirror very proud. But also, too, I know a lot of comics that forego the wife and children thing, which is fine. I respect them. But there's a dark side to that, too, because I know some guys that are stuck on the cruise ships or they're doing a one-nighter in Iowa and they want to shoot themselves. So these guys, they get on my nerves and I get on their nerves, but we balance each other. So I think it's very important to have that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good. And it's important, I think, for people like, on the younger side who also want to do comedy and are doing comedy like me to see that you can have both. Because a lot of times it's romanticized as an extreme this or an extreme that situation.
Yeah, no, Oscar Wilde said everything in moderation except for moderation. So it's not always going to be easy. And, there's times that are tough. But at the end of the day, like my wife says, I mean, we made a commitment to each other and there's no option other than to be together and love each other. So that's something you got to find someone that has that kind of oomph to her.
That's well said. And they're increasingly hard to find and might not be real. But talking about your comedy again.
Sure.
The way that, like you said, you have such a love of your wife and your family. How much of that factors into to your act itself? And I know you draw on what happens to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, perfect example. My youngest daughter, Robin, she was a little girl one time. We woke up and she said, "Daddy, I had a dream Barbie slept with me." And I went, "You too?" So, and my wife just looked at me and went, "Write it down." So, like stuff like that happens all the time. I do a joke about in the audience. I'll say to the audience, "Am I the only parent here when your kid leaves the room? Do you also give them the finger?" And it resonates with people. When I did the Edinburgh Comedy Festival, the really cool thing going to Scotland and having performed in Canada, I noted that people came up to me and went, "Wow, it's like you grew up with me. You talk about subject matters that I can relate with." Whereas it's universal. So it might be like me, what happened to me, but as soon as I talk about it, it resonates with people.
So you're an established name in comedy, but you also pretty much stayed locally in Philly, but you've also had the chance to do, like you said, take your act to like the Edinburgh Festival or other, countries outside of this one right now. Because a lot of, I think, people are under the assumption that you go to New York or you go to LA or you skip one and go to the other. How did you manage to actually become a literal, tangible, tax deductible comedian and still do this in other places?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I love Philadelphia. I do love this city, and where I live, I could be anywhere in 2 to 3 hours on the East Coast. And it sounds like I don't want to sound like an ass bragging about this, but I got a call a couple of weeks ago from Eddie Brill, who was the talent coordinator for Letterman. He picked the comics, right? And he said, "Hey Joey, we're doing this taping at Gotham. I need someone that I can trust that when they do the check drops, you could be on stage telling jokes after we record it." Now, ideally, would I like to be on that show? Yeah, hopefully one day I will. But the fact that there's Eddie Brill in New York calling me in Philadelphia because he knows who I am. New York ain't that far away. And New York, I like New York. I don't love New York. I love Philadelphia. And that's just kind of like you find where you live and you love where you live and you go. Now, don't get me wrong. I probably should spend more time on the West Coast. And as soon as this pandemic is over, maybe we'll see. Again, we'll just kind of go. But again, I like my life. I've got a pretty good life.
That's good. That's a good thing to feel when you wrap up sentences, just to end with "I like my life" right now. It's good.
I'm happy. I'm content. I can look myself in the mirror and know that I'm true to myself. So yeah.
That to thy own self, I think, or whatever Bill said.
And I watch these young comics. God bless them. Don't get me wrong. See, I'm like an old school guy. Like I see these young comics, and I've seen people move up a lot fast, and I kind of worry about them a little bit because they're moving too fast. Now, maybe jealousy on my part, I don't know, but to me, it's like I'm a middle. Well, how long have you been doing this? 3 years. Well, can you middle at a comedy club? Oh yeah, definitely. Can you middle at a country club? Can you middle at a synagogue? Can you middle can you do it all? Do you have all the tools? Are you truly? Because to me, I always say I'm a closer. I'm not a headliner. I'm not putting asses in seats. I'm the last guy that everybody's pleasantly surprised by. Oh, that last guy was good. So that's how I kind of view it. It's going back to that trade mentality. Are you the best middle you can be?
Don't you think, like, if you're in a position where you don't have a ton of opportunities, and I'm so guilty of it, but like saying yes to something that I'm probably not supposed to say yes to, and then
so I got a great story for that. Right. So me and a comic named Mike Stankiewicz were years ago. We're in this Roger Paul's office in New York City. Right. Roger's is a manager, agent kind of guy, and he's on the phone going, all right, I'll find somebody for you, right? And he hangs the phone. He goes, I got to find a headliner for the Comedy Nest in Montreal, but he's got to be Irish because there's a big Irish show that they want you to do on St. Patrick's Day. And I go, I can do that. He goes, where'd you ever headline? And I was smart enough to name a club that closed. I went, Slapsticks, Baltimore.
Tremendous.
Perfect, right? And he books me for the show, right? Now, I just lied my ass off, right? We're walking down the steps because his office was like 3 walk up, right? And Mike Stankiewicz goes, you headline Slapsticks? I've always tried to get in there. Why did you? I go, I never headlined Slapsticks, you moron. I lied. So next thing I know, I'm at the Comedy Nest in Montreal. First time really kind of performing out of the country. Drove 7 hours, right? So I'm there. I do the comedy club. But Saturday, it's the Montreal Canadian Irishman of the Year Award. So I just prepared. I mean, there was like 300 people. There were people, I watched them. They were speaking English, Gaelic, and French in the same conversation. And so they had like the Archbishop of Montreal. They had the mayor, and they had a Canadian comic up first. And the kid did okay. He did good. I'm like, but I know that audience. I know that Irish audience. I just hit them. And the roof went off. And I drove home going, oh my mother of God, I just closed. I got a headline job lying. So, but I pulled it off. So.
Part of an archbishop.
In front of an archbishop. Yeah, it's not my first archbishop I performed in front of. So,
wow. So like you said, like a lot of people are gonna say yes to things, and then it'll either work or they'll just kind of ruin a nice evening for a lot of people who wanted to go to a show at the expense of maybe getting better.
But that's the thing. Though, keep in mind this very important fact. That's why I say, are you really a middle? I was ready and I faked it, right? However, if I didn't succeed, that stink was going to stay on me and word gets out quick.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to lie and say, yeah, I can do the job, you better be lucky and be able to do the job, because I'm telling you right now, that stink will follow you.
That is a great lesson there. If you're willing to take the risk and sneak your credentials or that, make them fake, that like it's either going to really work or you're done now. But that kind of fits. That's kind of apt for everything.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, just put your nose down, do your job, and learn your craft. Learn to be good at what you're doing, and realize the people in the audience, they want to laugh. They want you to succeed. But I won't look at the audience before I go in, because that little voice in my head will go, "Oh, that guy's not going to like you. Oh, he's not going to." I won't do that. The voice inside my head imagines me killing right before I go on, and that's what I try to achieve.
It's good that you recognize enough of the voices in your head to pick out which ones you should, not listen to.
Well, this is a little goofy exercise. It's very goofy. I know it's goofy, but this is what I imagine. You remember the old Muppet Show backstage where they had all this stuff going on, right? So I imagine a younger version of me that was at the open mic that wanted to be a comedian in charge of running up these steps, knocking on a door of the comic that I need to be, going, "You're on," and that's the guy that I bring on stage with me, and that's the version of me that I have to be.
That's very Zen-like, meditative. I wasn't expecting such an answer.
That's what I do. But again, I've been at this game for a long time. So, one of the greatest theologians of our time, Francis Albert Sinatra, said, "Booze or religion, whatever gets you through the night." So that gets me through my show.
I really thought you were about to hit me with like an Augustine quote or something.
See, that's the thing. You take comedy, two different ideas, you blend them together and find a bridge.
And then there's a lot more overlap than like people are expecting, or you just lied and ruined the show for everybody.
Noted. Yeah.
So talk to me quickly about Dry Bar. How exactly did your special that you had for a long time, or a big chunk of material that you realized was ready to be put out as a piece, how did that come to be?
Well, I mean, again, it had to be really clean. So I was bringing some old stuff out that I haven't done in a long time because I had to fill the time. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to kind of revisit the old, I forgot about this joke. Oh, I forgot about that joke. So a lot of stuff on there is old stuff that I haven't done in a while. But if it was the right tool for the right job, they're very specific. They literally send you a video going, "Oh, I know you think you're clean. Let me show you what Utah clean is." And they show comedians, and then they show examples of what comedians that didn't quite meet this standard. And when I first got there, right? Well, the first thing I did, I checked in the hotel. I was walking up the Dry Bar to introduce myself. There was a bar, like in Provo, Utah, like a bar, because they don't do the alcohol chocolate thing. I went, "Hey, there's a tap room." So of course, I made a mental note. I walked in, I introduced myself. They showed me all the posters of everybody. And they go, "Well, we didn't produce this special because they didn't do what they were supposed to. We didn't do that." I'm like, "Guys, don't tell me this crap because I'll have it in my head." Yeah, well, so I walked away. It was in the afternoon. I was going to shoot my special Saturday. I was there Friday. I immediately went to the bar and had a few drinks. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, I feel comfortable now." I had a couple beers in me. So I went back to my room, fell asleep, worked on my act all day long. And Saturday taped 2 shows, and they went really well, thank God.
No, absolutely. And what came out like in the special, what it is great. It is really hilarious.
You're very kind.
It's a lot of relatable stuff.
Real quick, don't read the comments. It's the other thing I would tell young comedians. I did not follow that rule, and I found myself getting in an argument with people. So they're really funny. The first one was, "He looks like John Cena." I'm like, "Oh, I don't see it, but okay." He looks like an old John Cena. Is that John Cena's dad? And the final one that I was going to go find this guy was, "Is that John Cena in a fat suit?" I'm like, "You son of a bitch." So,
what do you make of the clean versus dirty comedy? Is there really a difference? Like, obviously in Utah, they draw really weird, specific moral lines that probably are wrong and unnecessary.
Different. I wouldn't say weird, but different.
But is there a difference?
No, listen, for me, I work clean because I just do. I can work a blues show, but
it's not a choice. It's just who you are.
It's just who I am. So but the thing is, it's funny and clean. Funny and clean. If you're dirty, be dirty, but be funny. You can get away with a lot more crap being dirty that isn't as funny, but gets a bigger laugh because it's dirty. No, be dirty. Look at Richard Pryor. Look at Robert Schimmel. I'm looking at comics who have had an edge and would be considered. Paul Mooney or Carlin could be dirty, but really, really well-written jokes. Like if you deconstructed their jokes, you go, "Okay, oh wow, that's really well-written." Who's the cat? David Tell. David Tell, unbelievably funny. Dirty, but unbelievably funny. So that's
the way I always thought about it, like with clean comedy, was that if you're going to not be dirty, quote unquote, what you're doing is like sharpening the diamond the most because like it's mathematically the funniest joke, and then cheating would be adding a fuck here or there. But
that was definitely, you're adding filler. There's no reason for that. I don't.
One of the angles always, or at least I've heard comedians talk about, was it used to be financially beneficial to be a clean comic because there was more outlets available at Letterman, like you said. But it doesn't seem as much to be the case with the internet because who's watching those things anymore? Do you? What do you see clean comedy continuing and like having this regimented difference, or?
I don't think there's a difference. I mean, you got to find your inner voice, and I'll slip a dirty joke in. So next week I'm doing a family resort. It's called Woodlock is the name of the resort, and you have to be squeaky clean there. But I do a joke in my act about my first daughter when she was born. my wife gave birth to a 9-pound, 4-ounce, 24-inch little girl naturally. And everybody kind of gasped. But I go, I assure you nothing that big ever went in. Now that's a dick joke, but
yes,
it's a dick joke, right? But I snuck it in. So
that was another dick joke. Yeah.
So
and it makes the joke even that much better because no one's expecting it then.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like you said a couple times in this interview, I didn't expect that answer. That's what you got to do. You got to bring the element of surprise.
Well, and I think for anybody checking out the special, they're going to be surprised with how much they laughed and how much they relate.
Oh, thanks.
And thank you for coming on, Joey. I appreciate you taking the time.
No, brother, thank you. Crack a window because I'm afraid you're in that car. You're gonna die of heat stroke.
No, it's fine. No, I have a baby in the back and I'm outside.
Oh, that's fine. Well, that's fine. And by the way, hey, do me a favor. Check out the special. You can see it on YouTube. My website is joeycallahan.com and Twitter is @JoeyCallahan.
Everybody follow Joey Callahan on all of those places and check out his new special on Dry Bar Comedy.